So we may or may not have got to the end of the comments on SO4 and SP7 and the mapping, but then what looks like we need to rewind and recut and redo is MP12 before we get on to DM4, which is where we got to. So
yes, yeah.
It's a wonderful, brave new world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, so I wonder if rather than in your hands, obviously, but perhaps if we adjourn.
Yes, I mean, shall we just adjourn for say what 15 minutes or 10 minutes?
10 minutes, probably. I mean, I suspect we're either going to know that we can get back up and running, or that there's some sort of technological problem by then. I hope.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, if we adjourn then and come back at 10:40.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
This winter, more than ever, with COVID-19 still circulating, we need help to reduce all avoidable risks. You can help protect the NHS, social care and loved ones by getting the flu vaccine. You may be eligible for the free vaccine at your GP or local pharmacy if you are over 65, pregnant or have a long-term condition. Find out if you are eligible at nhs.uk/staywell. Children up to year 7 can get the free nasal spray at school or through their GP if they are below school age. If you are not eligible for the free vaccine, you can pay for it at your local pharmacy. The flu vaccination does not give you flu. It reduces the risk of catching flu, as well as spreading it to others. If you had the vaccination in the past, that will not protect you as the flu strain changes every year, so you need to have a new one this year. It is also important to wash your hands often with warm water and soap. Use tissues when you cough or sneeze, and bin used tissues as quickly as possible. Thank you for helping to protect yourself and loved ones this winter.
My name's Jonathan Gribbin. I'm the Director of Public Health for Nottinghamshire County, and I'd like to tell you about the COVID-19 Local Outbreak Control Plan for Nottinghamshire. It's all about containing the virus so that we can protect one another, safeguard our critical services, and enable our schools, our workplaces, our communities to flourish again. And the plan describes how we will do that in Nottinghamshire. It complements the national test and trace arrangements, and it builds on local arrangements with key partners like Public Health England, the district and borough councils, the city council and our local NHS. It identifies a range of settings such as schools, workplaces, universities, care homes and so on, which require specific plans to deal with any fresh outbreaks of the virus. It describes how we'll be monitoring on a daily basis to spot if there are any new outbreaks, and then coordinating action to investigate and deal with them, deploying extra testing capacity if we need to, or contact tracing as appropriate. The plan also deals with how we will continue to provide support for people who are made vulnerable because they need to self-isolate, and we'll be doing that through our community support hub. And we'll refine the plan as we go along to reflect the latest best practice and the information which government will be providing to the council. Finally, I want to acknowledge the lengths to which so many people and organisations have gone to already in recent months to stick with the guidance, to maintain social distancing of 2 metres wherever possible, to wash your hands thoroughly and frequently, to stay at home if you or someone in your household has symptoms, to get tested and to follow the advice that you receive when you get the result. By observing the guidance, you're protecting not only your own life and livelihood, that of your friends and also your loved ones, but also that of people you may never meet, but people who you're depending on and whom we must each depend as well. Your role in that is critical. Thank you for your help to contain the virus.
COVID-19 is in our communities and the number of cases is on the rise. So it's essential that we each play our part in full by following all of the government guidance. Only by doing this can we keep our schools and businesses open. If you're young and healthy, you may feel the virus isn't a threat to you. But someone more vulnerable to coronavirus than you, perhaps someone closer to you than you realise, is depending on you to play your part in breaking the chain of transmission. So I'm asking everyone to do their bit. Stick to the rule of 6 for gatherings indoors or outdoors. Wash your hands thoroughly and regularly. Wear a face covering in enclosed spaces. Observe social distancing of 2 metres or 1 metre plus precautions where 2 metres really isn't possible. Follow all of the guidelines about car sharing. If you have symptoms, self-isolate and get a free test immediately. If we work together on this, we can control the spread of the virus. Thank you.
This winter, more than ever, with COVID-19 still circulating, we need help to reduce all avoidable risks. You can help protect the NHS, social care and loved ones by getting the flu vaccine. You may be eligible for the free vaccine at your GP or local pharmacy if you are over 65, pregnant or have a long-term condition. Find out if you are eligible at nhs.uk/stay well. Children up to year 7 can get the free nasal spray at school or through their GP if they are below school age. If you are not eligible for the free vaccine, you can pay for it at your local pharmacy. The flu vaccination does not give you flu. It reduces the risk of catching flu as well as spreading it to others. If you had the vaccination in the past, that will not protect you as the flu strain changes every year, so you need to have a new one this year. It is also important to wash your hands often with warm water and soap. Use tissues when you cough or sneeze and bin used tissues as quickly as possible. Thank you for helping to protect yourself and loved ones this winter.
My name's Jonathan Gribbin. I'm the Director of Public Health for Nottinghamshire County, and I'd like to tell you about the COVID-19 Local Outbreak Control Plan for Nottinghamshire. It's all about containing the virus so that we can protect one another, safeguard our critical services, and enable our schools, our workplaces, our communities to flourish again. And the plan describes how we will do that in Nottinghamshire. It complements the national test and trace arrangements, and it builds on local arrangements with key partners like Public Health England, the district and borough councils, the city council and our local NHS. It identifies a range of settings such as schools, workplaces, universities, care homes and so on, which require specific plans to deal with any fresh outbreaks of the virus. It describes how we'll be monitoring on a daily basis to spot if there are any new outbreaks, and then coordinating action to investigate and deal with them, deploying extra testing capacity if we need to, or contact tracing as appropriate. The plan also deals with how we will continue to provide support for people who are made vulnerable because they need to self-isolate, and we'll be doing that through our community support hub. And we'll refine the plan as we go along to reflect the latest best practice and the information which government will be providing to the council. Finally, I want to acknowledge the lengths to which so many people and organisations have gone to already in recent months to stick with the guidance, to maintain social distancing of 2 metres wherever possible, to wash your hands thoroughly and frequently, to stay at home if you or someone in your household has symptoms, to get tested and to follow the advice that you receive when you get the result. By observing the guidance, you're protecting not only your own life and livelihood, that of your friends and also your loved ones.
Yes, I'm told that the councils, that from the council's IT perspective, they say it's back up and working as it should be. So,
okay, I think the last but I think it was practically finished.
Showing up. Just put your camera. Sorry, sir. Technical.
I mean,
so would it be useful for us just to recap where we got to on SP7 and SO4?
yes, that would be
very briefly, and then if there was anyone who was interrupted before the end of it, we get to the conclusion at least of the discussion.
Yes.
So I think, and please chip in anyone if I'm not doing this justice, but in relation to SO4 and SP7, it was agreed that the word economically would be removed, and so the focus is on important, rather than economically important. And I think it was also agreed that the council would list batching plants, etc., in annual monitoring, and that the mapping would seek to refer to so that the mapping exercise would be revisited to include infrastructure facilities on minerals sites.
Yes,
I've covered the territory.
Yes.
Mr. and Mrs. Osborne-James, anything else that needs saying to that as a summary of where we got to?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry, we did refer to, excuse me, proposed modifications that are already in hand, but I think Graham may have picked those up. Sorry, I've not got my glasses on.
Yeah, so PM20 in particular, and also PM23.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Yes, that's all, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. And then we moved on to policy MP12.
Yes, sir. And I think what I said there was that we had already indicated through the proposed mods that the paras 1A and 1B 1A and 2A would come out, but that as a result of the discussion that took place in the relevant session, there's a neater, simpler way of dealing with parts 1 and 2, which is to effectively include in part 1 the words "and commercial production." So we have exploration and appraisal and commercial production of oil and gas will be supported, provided the site and equipment. And then what is presently 1B would simply follow on, all as part of the body of 1. So that, which means that where part 1 refers to provided the site and equipment, it would then go on to say are located where this will not have an unacceptable environmental impact. That means that all 3 elements, exploration, appraisal and commercial production, are treated consistently and removes the ambiguity that arose that other people certainly were raising in relation to Part 2 and production. And so then Part 3 would become Part 2.
Yes, thank you. And then we moved on to policy DM4.
Yes, sir. And this is a policy that has already had some suggested quite extensive revisions through the proposed modifications. What I'll do, sir, just for the very ease of your reference, is that in relation to the text that we sent through that we discussed yesterday and that you indicated might assist this discussion, you've got some track changes added, and I'll just identify what's been proposed by way of modifications that you've already seen. Two changes that arise out of the discussion yesterday, and one new point, and I'll explain why that's been made. So, if I may, so just going through the policy in order, DM41A, the addition of the words at the end of the subparagraph in accordance with the requirements of the Habitats Regs 2017, that's already identified in proposed mod 37. The next change, sir, is the new one in 1B. You'll see that there's reference to except where the need for and benefits of the development. So need for and has been added. And so that's to be consistent with the text that was already in C and D, where need for and benefits was referred to, and it was simply an omission from the text in B. And then, as Mr. Crouch explained yesterday, paragraph D has been split into paragraphs D and E. The text in E is exactly as was contained within D previously. D has an additional additional wording, so it now reads: they would not result in the loss of populations of a priority species or areas of priority habitat, except where the need for and benefits of development in that location outweigh the impacts. And then, as I say, the remainder of what was D remains in E. So the other thing, just to point out before we go on there, is that there was some discussion yesterday about whether that properly reflects the hierarchy of designations, and in particular, the differences between B and so sites of SSIs and then sites of more local interest. And you'll see, sir, in B, the differences are that there are references to the needs and benefits of the development clearly outweighing the importance of the site, and there being no suitable alternative. And that's obviously so it's a sort of higher threshold, as it were, more onerous test than what you see in C, which deals with except where the need for and benefits of the development in that location outweigh the impacts. So that, I hope, reflects the concern that was raised yesterday over whether this does indeed reflect the hierarchy. Moving on, sir, paragraph 2, the changes there are already set out at proposed mod 38.
Yes.
Although there's one small typo which I can spot, but that's incidental in the first line of 2A. And the change in 3A, the addition of the words "and provides net gains for biodiversity," is already set out in proposed mod 39.
Yes, thank you.
So those are the changes.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you for that. Yes, I mean, that's my recollection of the, that reflects the discussion yesterday. Yes, I have no further comments on that. Okay, my next note is it concerns. Well, I've got a note that paragraph 5.73. Sorry, yes.
Sorry, just to butt in, there's one before then, I think, which is 5.62 on page 97.
Right, yeah.
It's a point you picked up yesterday, sir, so I know it's in mine, but the council's formal response to your supplementary question 51 had suggested some amended text to 562, and I confirmed yesterday that it is the council's intention that the text be amended as per that formal written response to your question, but that the change had been omitted from the schedule of proposed modification. So that needs to just be not forgotten, if I can put it that way.
Okay, yes, thank you. Yeah. Yes, and we discussed paragraph 5.73, which follows policy DM6, and that should be perhaps expanded to more accurately reflect paragraph 195 of the framework. In particular, paragraphs, subparagraphs A to D within that paragraph.
Yes, sir. Because at the moment the paragraph starts to explain some of the tests for what to do when there's substantial harm, but stops halfway, if I can put it that way. And I think the other thing, sir, is there's also a need to, having dealt with what one does with substantial harm in the supporting text, that it would be useful to have an explanation of along the lines of 196 of the framework, where there's less than substantial harm.
Yes. Okay.
So that's the intention there. I don't have text for you yet, sir, but that's the.
Okay. And now there was, I think there was some discussion as to whether policy DM6 needed amendment. But
yes, sir. There was in the context of whether the sort of changes that we just contemplated, or we just discussed in relation to 573, meant that any change was required to part 2 of the policy. But so I think the conclusions the council are that the 2 it accurately summarises the position, which is essentially to say that whether you're dealing with harm to a designated or non-designated heritage asset, you need to demonstrate, it can only be permitted if it's demonstrated that there are public benefits which outweigh the level of harm or loss. And the important thing there, sir, is relative to the importance of the heritage asset. And then you look to the supporting text and the framework as to what that cascade approach is.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't think part 2 of the policy requires amendment, providing the supported text is amended in the way that we've just suggested.
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, and then paragraph 5.118 is to be removed.
Yes, sir.
And then on the site allocation development briefs.
So I've got one other thing to suggest before we get there, which is, if I can just ask you, it's not really, the change isn't going to be in DM12 or the supporting text, but it arises in relation to the discussion that took place there. You'll recall there were some points raised by the Wildlife Trust as to best and most versatile land in the context of aftercare and after use.
Yes.
And we looked at 5.127 of the supporting text in relation to what it says about that, and we did say that we would go away and think about whether or not that there needed to be any amendment to that. So I think the conclusion internally was that the NWT raised a point that was worth adjusting the text in the plan for, but not here. So if I can ask you to turn back in the plan to paragraph 5.40, which is on page 91, and that's is the text of the policy DM3, which deals with agricultural land and soil quality. You'll see that 540 is a short paragraph. It says, where sites are already in agricultural use, it may be desirable for the land to be returned to agriculture following development, although other uses, and so it's suggested here that perhaps it's then added in brackets, such as restoration uses, close brackets, and then it continues, may be appropriate provided that the long-term potential of the best and most versatile agricultural land could be maintained. So it's picking up the point that the Trust was keen to see included in the plan in what the council considers to be a more appropriate and more effective place.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And you're not proposing any change to paragraph 5.127?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Okay. On the development briefs, I understand site MP20 is to be removed.
Yes, sir. Well, can I just double check? I think that's, as I understood your evidence yesterday, Mr. Osborne-James. That's the site that's been granted permission, isn't it?
That's the Best Thorpe East one, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm a bit behind. Yeah, yes, that's been granted permission, so we no longer need that development brief.
Okay.
Okay. And that would be removed from policy MP2 as well, would it?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then in relation to site MP2P, Mill Hill, from the discussion yesterday, now reference was made to the gas main crossing the site, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that you think that should properly be referred to in the brief.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I think there were three things, and Mr. Osborne-James will come back if I've missed anything. But there are three things that the council confirmed yesterday would be appropriate for consistency purposes to include within the development brief, which were gas main, as you mentioned, overland flows, and bird strike.
Yes.
And then there were then, so obviously we've got this list that was read through yesterday by the parish council, and I understand has been sent in writing to Mr. Osborne-James, which is a list of other matters that the parish council would like to see included in the development brief. And as I indicated earlier, that's a matter that the council is happy to review and to see whether or not some, if not all of it, should be included in that development brief, or whether it's more appropriate to leave some matters for the application stage to be assessed against the relevant suite of development plan policies.
Yes. Okay, that's fine. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and I just had a note that under MP3D, Bestwood 2 North, there was just a note to perhaps consider splitting the first bullet point into 2 points.
Yes, and also to reflect the fact that it's partial loss of the local wildlife site, not entire loss.
Yes. Okay, does that cover everything?
So there's one other thing that I mentioned for completeness / avoidance of doubt, and I know you'll be well aware of it, which is that the existing schedule of proposed modifications, in a number of instances, gives the detailed wording that's proposed to be amended, and in others it says will be amended to. Let me give you an example. For example, just completely at random, PM 32 says amend final sentence to refer to the need to assess the impact on Cresswell Crags Schedule Ancient Monument. So the intention of what's to change is clear, but you don't have the precise wording. So I won't read out all the proposed mods where the point is made, but the text isn't drafted. But obviously, so those are also matters where the detail has to follow, and that will be picked up in the schedule that will be sent to you.
Yes.
When these changes that we've just discussed today are picked up too. So you'll get one compendious, hopefully final version of the main modifications suggested. Yes.
Okay. That's absolutely fine. Yes. Some of the, I mean, I'll need to sort of give some consideration. It's some of the modifications that are not identified as main modifications. They may actually be main modifications, but I'll go through them. And
so yes, we're in your hands on that. I mean, we're obviously happy to proceed on the basis of if you think anything should be included, then that's fine.
Okay, and I think where you have sort of a number of modifications relating to the same policy, they should really be one main modification. So, you know, so under, say, policy DM4, for example, you could have one main modification rather than have a number of.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and they should all be prefixed MM in the final schedule.
Yes.
And there is no need for the reasons column. So really the final schedule, which goes out for consultation, just needs to have the MM reference, the plan reference, and the modification.
So. So sorry, I've just picking up one point, and I'll if I may, I'll raise it. It goes well. So Charlie, you were in the middle of discussing memos. I've just been told something that I need to just let you know about in a minute. So, but I apologize.
Yes, that's fine. No, go ahead.
So I think, as I understand it, the Best Thought East site is the subject of a resolution to grant, rather than subject to a 106, rather than from it having been granted. And I'm looking to others to confirm whether Rachel is that.
I think yes, that's correct, sir. Yes.
Okay. So in which case, it isn't the case that has been granted, and therefore
yes. Okay.
The reference in MP2 and the development brief, the status of that is not quite where we thought it was. That's
no. Okay. Okay, thanks.
I apologise for interrupting.
If the council, if you send to me your final schedule of modifications, and then I will comment on that, and then it needs to go out for consultation for a minimum period of 6 weeks, and I would ask that the council makes clear in the consultation that comments should be addressed only to the proposed changes and their implications, and not to revisit the plan as a whole. Yes, the council will need to consider the need for any sustainability appraisal or habitats regulations assessment of the modifications. Following the consultation period, it's difficult at this stage to give a definite indication of the timescale for my report, but as a general indication, I would expect it to be about 6 weeks to 2 months after the expiry of the consultation period. Having said that, I mean, I know I'm mindful that I am tied up on another project in the early part of next year. So, but I mean, I would certainly aim to get the report out within that timescale.
Thank you, sir.
And and I will be able to give a firmer indication nearer the time. And my report will be sent to the council for a fact check before it is finally provided.
So yes.
Are there any procedural questions?
No, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank you all for your contributions to the hearing. And I'd like to thank Ian Kemp for his efficient organisation of the hearing sessions and organisation of the IT in particular. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.